Sure. Ukraine has been blaming Russia for escalating violence in the eastern part of the country for months. Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian separatists have been battling for control of several Ukrainian cities, and the Ukrainian military stepped up attacks on separatists after Ukraine elected a new president in May. In recent days, there have been several reports of Russian separatists shooting down Ukrainian aircraft. Tom Nichols is a professor of national security at the U.S. Naval War College. Welcome to you, Thomas. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening, John.
Who has the capability to shoot down a plane like this?
The Russians do, and the Ukrainian military has some of these, but they're not in that area. And so I think there's no question that the Russians' fingerprints are all over this, either directly or indirectly. That's one of the reasons those airliners fly that high. Only states can shoot down things that are at that altitude, and that's why they didn't expect to get shot at that high in the air.
So the rebels, the Russian separatists, would they have the capability?
Not unless the Russians gave it to them, no. This Buk anti-aircraft launcher is not something you can just stick on your shoulder. It's the size of a truck. It has to come from somewhere. It takes a lot of training. As one of your other guests pointed out, it takes several people to operate it. This isn't something that you just go pluck out of an armory and turn the key and it goes. This takes people who know what they're doing, who intend to do what they're doing. They train, and I think that this was clearly done with either the connivance of or supply from the Russians. It had to be.
What impact does this have on the Allies, on NATO?
Well, I think this is the day that Russian foreign policy finally went off the cliff. And I think that even the people in Europe and NATO who have wanted to stand a bit back from the Russians and give them some benefit of the doubt now are faced with a moment that's a lot like the moment in 1983 when the Soviet Union shot down a Korean airliner. That this one is simply impossible to avert our eyes from. And I think that's going to have some effect. Now, there's nothing we can do about it militarily. Nothing's going to bring that airplane back. Nothing is going to stop the Russians from treating Ukraine as though it's a satellite. But Putin can put a stop to this. He can stop supplying the separatists. He can order them to stand down. These guys are not independent. They are taking their orders from Moscow, and they're reporting back to Moscow. And the responsibility for this leads right back to Moscow.
As we know, the flight originated in the Netherlands, which is a NATO member country. So does this mean that NATO is suddenly going to be more involved than they would have otherwise?
I don't think so. I think that this is not a direct attack on the Dutch or the Malaysians. This is reckless, violent behavior by people who have been given advanced weaponry by a state supplier, Russia, who are acting irresponsibly. And I think that's how the reaction has to be phrased. I mean, this is not a direct... actually, I shouldn't say that because we don't know where that missile was launched from. But I don't see NATO being somehow activated or more involved. I think this is a longer-term issue that Russia's true intent and the true level of brutality they're willing to engage in here is finally clear.
I mean, you know, everyone has been trying to figure out why this happened, and we don't know. We don't have the answers. We don't know who did it. Up till now, we have no idea, and maybe we will know in the next couple of days. But, you know, you try to figure out whether the strategy behind an attack like this, or could it just have been an accident?
Well, it's possible that shooting directly at a civilian airliner, if the transcripts that have been put out on the internet are accurate, it may be that the guys who fired that missile were a little surprised themselves. But I think we're going to know everything, and soon. This did not take place in the middle of nowhere. This is a very closely watched area from all directions. One of the reasons I think it may have been just purely violent and reckless is that they were bragging about it this morning. The Russian separatists on their Facebook page were saying that they'd shot down an airplane, and then they immediately took it down. They were all over social media about it until perhaps they'd realized what they'd done and started taking it down. I think it was also revealing that President Putin felt the need to call President Obama. I think somebody walked into the Kremlin and said, "We've got a problem here." But they've been supplying these guys. They've been encouraging them. They've been encouraging them to act as though there are no restraints on them, and this is the outcome we get.
Thomas Nichols, good to have you in the program. Thanks again.
Thank you, John.
Our other top story we've been following, the Israeli invasion of Gaza began